Hi, everyone. Barry McGuire here. It's Thursday, so it must be live at 5. Barry McGuire's Creative Real Estate Education Facebook group gathers to talk about all things real estate. And today, we're on a bit of a rent-to-own focus, I guess, because we do have a workshop coming up on March the 6th that is a full-day rent-to-own workshop. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is the business of rent to own. And so Neil and Rachel Oliver are going to be on to help us out with some of the business at as they see it from their level, which is probably the most complicated level. They're doing it full time as a business. Now, both of them had big 6-figure jobs that they don't have those jobs anymore because they have a full-time rental business. But right at the very beginning, I want to talk about the business of rent to own when it's just you. You're venturing out on your own. You're deciding you want to do a rent to own. You can be doing the tenant first strategy or property first strategy, depending. But it's just you. You've got a job, a day job, and you don't have a joint venture partner. It's just you. So, with that in mind, let's bring in the redoubtable Wayne Hillier, who is our behind-the-scenes guy running everything. And there he is.
Barry?
I just surprised Wayne by telling him he was going to come on and talk about the business of rent to own. He said, I have to go do my hair. And I said, what hair? You got a little on top there, but there's nothing on the sides. I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, gotta look good when you're on the camera, Barry.
You gotta look good. That's what I always say. All right, so let's talk about the business of own from the very basics. So there's a business aspect to it right at the beginning, because you have to figure out whether or not doing a rent to own is going to be a profitable deal. So let's just say you've done some marketing, some networking, your funnel is funneling prospects towards you, and you have a rent to own. Let's say it's in Alberta here, where it's a different perspective than it is if you're in Toronto or if you're in very busy parts of British Columbia or other busy parts of the country. So you've got a pretty good prospect, it looks like. On the business side of things, you have to know it's going to work. You have to know these people can afford to pay. Let's talk about maybe the top 3 things that you look at in a potential rent-to-own tenant to decide whether or not they are actually going to do a deal with you.
Top 3 things. I would say number 1, you need to know that they're going to be able to qualify in the future. You don't want to set someone up for a rent-to-own and they have no chance of being able to qualify for their own mortgage. Essentially, what you're doing is you're setting them up for failure. So, number 1, you want to make sure that they will be able to qualify. So, setting them up with a mortgage broker that understands rent to own, that understands the rules, is a great first step. Second would be affordability. You want to make sure that not only can they afford the property in the future, when they do qualify for the mortgage, they also need to be able to afford these typically more expensive payments during the duration of your rent-to-own term. It really depends on how you structure it, but a lot of times it can be a lot more expensive than rent. So you got to make sure it's sustainable for that 2 to 3 year term or longer, so that they don't default in the middle of your term, and again, you're setting them up for failure. Number 3. Sorry, did you have something to say there?
No, I'm going to wait till you finish your 3rd thing, and then we'll have further chats.
Number 3, I base it off of character. And again, you just threw me on the spot here, so these are my top 3 based off of me not putting much thought into it. But I mean, for me, the top 3 off the top of my head is the last one would be character. Is this the type of person that I believe will be able to repair their credit or will be able to actually qualify in the future? Sometimes on paper, yes, they have the means to be able to do this. If they just do these couple things, absolutely, they will be able to qualify for a mortgage. But are they the type of person that will do those things? Are they the type of people that, will change their spending habits, or will dedicate maybe a percentage of their income towards paying off debts? You need to be a good judge of character when it comes to rental.
Yeah, character is very important, and I think, is that not one of the standard? Is it the 4 C's of credit that lenders and brokers have as things they look at? I think character might be one of
Do they
the
really?
4 C's. I
I
should know
wonder.
those off the top of my head. I've looked at them often enough. But character is very important. I mean, people can't buy for a reason. They can't buy because they can't qualify for a mortgage. They can't qualify for a mortgage because of something in their past. And as we all know, it can be many different things that are preventing them from qualifying. But if one of the things is they can't resist signing up for the next new shiny toy, and putting it on credit, and ruining the ratios, or if they can't take direction, if part of what your mortgage broker says is, I've looked at these people hard, I've talked to them, I've reviewed their history, I've looked at all of their supporting documentation, and what they really need to do is they need to show up once a month for an hour and a half and be mentored on learning about credit and how to manage credit. And if they don't do that, I really don't think that they're going to be able to overcome the issues.
Right.
So yeah, on the character side of things, it's going to take an hour and a half, a month of diligent relearning and retraining yourself. Then you got to be confident they can do that, because without it, they're going to fail.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
that's an important. I think that's an important part of character.
It's really tough to teach. It's tough to teach.
Yeah.
And that'll come with experience. And I'm sure Neil and Rachel Oliver are going to have lots of great tips at the Rent to Own course on March 6th. They're going to, and I've got a bunch of great tips as well. And I know that Neil and I have, we've had a small discussions about, what we look for specifically when we're trying to choose tenant buyers. It's not just about numbers, not just about what's on the paper. You gotta look for certain things too, because they're a bit of a needle in the haystack, because you get lots of applicants, but there's a certain type that I think that are the best, that are the most likely to succeed.
Yeah, it's funny that we're emphasizing character here in what people think of as a numbers game. We're talking about the business of rent to own. And when you talk business, you don't generally say or count on character assessment being such a big part of it. But I completely agree with you that character assessment is important. And one of the reasons it's so important is because in the end, it's kind of your gut about what these people are going to do. An analysis of numbers and past circumstances and history can only take you so far. And regrettably, habits are hard to change for everyone. It doesn't matter what kind of a habit you have. If you've been doing things a certain way for a long period of time, it's a habit. And if those are credit habits that need to be broken, then those are tough. And so the character side is really important.
Do you guys have anything to add?
Well,
how are you guys?
there.
Sorry
Hey,
for
gang.
being tardy.
That's all right. We were just talking about the level 1 business of real estate, where you're doing a deal on your own. You're just doing it on your own. You don't have joint venture partners, and it's not your circumstances where this is a full-time business for both of you. So we were just. Did you hear Wayne's top 3 items for doing a deal by yourself, kind of at the first level? Did you hear those, or can we repeat those for you?
Please.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Wayne, why don't you repeat your top 3, and then we can get Neil and Rachel's take on this. And
what was number 1? I remember vaguely. Forget number 1 already. It was they need to be able to qualify in the future. So you need to make sure that they're actually going to be able to qualify in the future. So due diligence at the beginning is super important. Second would be affordability. So for not just affordability on the home in the future, like, being able to afford the mortgage and the property tax and stuff, they also need to be able to afford the payments during the term, which can typically be a little more expensive than what they're used to for rent, because they're trying to, buy it within the next 2 to 3 years. So you got to make sure that they can afford both. And then lastly is character, which, we've talked about before about, yes, on paper, the credit specialist and the mortgage broker, they say, yeah, absolutely. If they do all of these things, they will qualify for a mortgage in the future. They will succeed. But are they the type of people that will actually go and do those things? So that's my top three.
That was the top three. All right. Well, Neil and Rachel, what do you think? So those are Wayne's top three, and I did put him on the spot. I said, Wayne, I need you to tell me your top three. And he went, whoa, thanks, buddy. Well, he didn't quite say it. But
If I had to say anything, Wayne, I'd say you nailed them. The only thing I would add with the affordability that I think a lot of people forget about is that it's one thing for them to be able to afford the property and the payments. And yes, you're right. In many cases, it can be what I found anyway, it's a little bit higher than what current rents are, especially here in Ontario. So, rents can go anywhere between $2,000 and $3,500 for a house right now. In fact, there are bidding wars on rental units, which is ridiculous because a lot of people seem to be moving away from the rental unit here because they can't raise rents when they want. Now, we're running into landlord issues where you can't evict. There's these moratoriums on evictions and so on. So people are sort of moving away from that, which means that there are fewer rentals. And now there's a bit more of a bidding war on the rental side. But the affordability should also cover their debt, right? Because in some cases, these people come to us with not credit challenges, but also some debt, right? And one of the things that's changed in the market for mortgages is that they look at debt load and your debt to income ratio, right? So it was like maybe a year or two ago, you could have a car payment, a $50,000 car, and basically they would still allow you to get a mortgage. Whereas now they're taking that into account, and it's changing the way they're qualifying people. So they have to be able to afford the property, but also the debt that they might be carrying, because really this doesn't work if they can't pay down their debt while they're in the rent home.
Right.
And if I may add another aspect to these qualifiers is an important consideration is how long is it going to take time to repair the tenant buyer's credit? So some people come to us and, like Neil was saying, they are carrying so much debt that it's not realistic for them to make a dent in that debt over 2 or 3 years during the rent-to-own term. So their debt needs to be fixable and repairable within usually about a 2-year period. If they're in a 3-year rent-to-own, we want them to be able to fix their challenges within that 2-year time frame. Anything longer puts a little bit more risk in terms of them being able to be mortgage ready at the end of the rent-to-own term.
But to put a little asterisk on that, though, we don't take on people that have too much debt. Right. So somebody with $100,000 in debt and they only have $80,000 in income is not a fit for rent to own, because they will never be in a position to own that home within a 3-4 year window. So it still has to make sense, right? That when I'm talking about debt, we're talking maybe 50% debt to income ratio. So it's high for the banks, but the reality is if they only pay down that debt for the next 3 years, a car being the one thing I'm talking about, they would naturally decrease it by 30, 35, 40, 50% possibly. Now their debt to income ratio is a lot better. Mm-hmm. So, that's the other key consideration, is that it's not just about, oh, you have some debt and you look good, you have some income. If they're carrying a ton of debt, they're probably going to be, and Barry, I heard you mentioning habits. Sometimes those are habits that are hard to break. They like to spend, they're going to continue to spend. And maybe that's where, even having a mortgage broker working with them isn't going to potentially break that habit for them. So you still want to use your judgment, and Wayne's point, due diligence, extremely important. Make sure you know that person, and make sure character, they're determined, right? Mm-hmm. If they're determined to make it work, they're going to make it work. And, we've seen a lot of people succeed when, I don't think anybody else would have given them a chance, but you can really tell from their character that this is something they need and they're going to make it work. We've actually had people in a 3 and 4 year program complete it in less than 2 years because they were ultra determined to move through the program very quickly, and they did everything they had to do that. So, Yeah, I think those are really, really key components when you're looking at a rent-to-own as a starter business, one person doing this on their own. Absolutely. Those are key components to finding the right people that are going to fit the rent-to-own.
All right. So I'm thinking about the folks who have the best of intentions but bad habits, and we all know they have bad habits. Do you spend a bit more time at the beginning of the rent-to-own if they need to do things monthly? Do you or does your mortgage broker / credit counselor spend more time with them early on to say, if they're not doing it in the first month, 2 months, then we're already in trouble. So let's track that.
Yeah, for me anyway, because when I'm looking at each and every individual tenant buyer, again, I take into account all three things. Can they afford this property? Are they going to be able to qualify at the end of the term? And what is their credit situation? And what has caused them to get to that point, right? Because it's one thing to have a credit score, and you get this, 480, and you'll be like, whoa, 480. But if you look at their credit, it's really not that bad. It's just one bad decision has now sort of let itself fall into place for 5 or 6 or 8 years. I had somebody about 4 years ago, I reviewed a credit report and they had one item on there, and it was a collection item for Rogers for $29, but it had hit their score so hard. And I mentioned it to them. I did not end up working with them, just to put that up there, but I ended up mentioning to them what needed to happen. And their whole thing was, no, I'm not going to pay that. Out of principle, I won't pay that. Okay, well, they're going to hold you back from ever owning anything because your credit will never improve until you do. So, those are the things that you're looking at on a regular basis. You just want to make sure that, you're doing your due diligence. Again, that's the word that you're going to hear the most, I think.
So I just want to talk about the Rogers $29 thing. So if it was 2 years ago, so you're talking to them, you look at credit, and so 2 years ago, they didn't pay the $29. And now they've ignored it for 2 years. So what do Rogers and the credit reporting companies do with that $29 non-payment? Do they keep emphasizing it and making it worse and worse and worse on their credit score until they get to 480 when they were much higher?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Basically, they go into collections, and then the collection agency will chase them down for a bit. And as they're chasing, their score is being reduced, right? They're sitting with something, and again, $28 may not seem like much, but to a company like Rogers, and it seems to be phone companies, Bell, they seem to have a lot of impact on the scores, and people don't realize that something so little can mean so much. So in a situation like that, back to your original question about where do we focus the most in supporting them, we align them with a mortgage professional up front, but we are always around to support them. So I support right off the bat by kind of explaining what needs to happen immediately, right? So even in a situation where they might have more than one collection, you want to immediately reach out to those collection agencies and get the credits back in good standing, right? Or those collections back in good standing. You want to at least start to negotiate a payment plan. Because if there's a payment plan and you're starting to pay on that, it's going to help to improve your credit rather than it sitting in a collection. So you definitely need to support them at the beginning, and you need to do regular check-ins with them just to make sure that they are staying on track with the things that you've asked them to do. So there's a lot of work involved, but it's certainly rewarding when they get to the end and they buy the house and they're thanking you for changing their life. It's quite rewarding.
Well, carrying on with the business, and maybe this is, well, hold on. Let's answer Janet's question because we're right in the middle of it. Janet says, how can you walk them through improving their credit? I have tenants that previously owned a home. Due to a broken relationship, they just can't seem to get past the losses maybe that they have taken on. How do you walk them through? How do you coach them on credit of any kind?
Yeah.
I think that my first thought, and I know Neil has a very different approach to the business of rent to own, is to create a team. If you try to do this as a business, it's going to be very difficult for you to stretch yourself and wear so many different hats. walking them through improving their credit is not a one-off. They're in a rent-to-own process for 3 or 4 years. There's multiple touch points, there's multiple milestones, and they need someone who is dedicated to helping people become mortgage ready. So unless you're a mortgage professional, you're going to have a very difficult time taking that on by yourself. The business of rent-to-own really means that you have created a team of people who can step in and exercise their level of expertise at different stages of the process, whether it's the qualifying process, whether it's the improving their credit process, whether it's helping them find the right property or running the numbers, whatever it may be. There's very integral points in the rent-to-own transaction, and credit improvement is super, super important. And you probably don't want to take that on by yourself if you're looking at doing this in the context of a business. That's my thought.
Yeah. So in our situation, we are fortunate that I am a mortgage professional. So I am looking and qualifying each and every tenant buyer with the lens of a mortgage agent, right? So I'm looking at their credit and I'm sort of giving them guidelines, a blueprint, basically, of how they need to, what steps they need to take in order to improve their credit. The reason being that I even became a mortgage professional was simply because I just found that there was a lot of mortgage professionals out there that were giving bad advice. I'll be perfectly honest. I've been doing this a long time. I've learned a lot of the ins and outs around credit. I was giving advice prior to being licensed, and I was finding that that was being overridden by licensed professionals who were giving the different or bad advice, I guess is really what I want to get to. Different advice from what I was giving. And they were telling them to take out more credit. You need more credit to improve your credit. And I'm like, you don't need to take out a $10,000 loan when you can't afford the other $10,000 you already have. Doesn't make any sense. So becoming a mortgage professional for me really did help in terms of having them actually listen. But to Rachel's point, we now have behind us where we on that lead who now third party runs with it. So I'm not really as implicated, but I am always available for support if that's what's required.
So I absolutely agree with the need to do the analysis and the diligence and to set up the plan and to get the help of a solid mortgage professional that understands RTO and is aligned with how you think. I mean, that is part of the team, as Rachel says, and it is really, you need someone like that with that training and talent. Very hard for lay folks to do that on their own. But as I'm hearing all this, I have heard, not too many times, but I have heard experienced mortgage professionals say, Barry, yes, happy to take on this person and coach them on rent to own. I understand completely how it goes, as you know. But I have a lot of tire kickers. This takes a lot of my time. The bank doesn't pay me any more money for placing this mortgage than for a normal mortgage where I do no coaching. So, Barry, I hope you understand that if I'm going to be involved to the level it sounds like you want me involved, then I've got to charge these folks a little money to do that. So have you run into the notion that a mortgage professional wants to be paid for this extra coaching, and how do you work that into the numbers?
So we have also come across that, and I mean, the business of rent to own involves strategic partnerships. That applies to pretty much any real estate business that you're looking to scale and grow. We definitely run into that a lot. A lot of mortgage professionals, and not to knock them and not, of course, to perpetuate a stereotype, but in our experience, a lot of them are very transactional. They want to get paid right today for the work that they do. And it's difficult to find people who understand the longer game, the people that are in this industry for a longer term, that understand the value of building a pipeline of clients. And that's what we're feeding these mortgage professionals is a pipeline of future business for their business. And every business, including mortgage professionals, need a pipeline of future business. Whether they know it or not is secondary. But the key is to find strategic partners that see that value. And I wouldn't get sucked into paying a fee or paying some sort of a basically I wouldn't get sucked into them saying I want to get paid for that. They have to essentially establish relationships and establish the value that they bring to that relationship in order to generate loyalty. Because keep in mind, what we're doing is we're basically helping a family become mortgage ready. And that mortgage professional will reap the benefits for many, many years to come once that family is mortgage ready. So they will get the mortgage transaction at the end of the 3-year term. There's going to be renewals on that mortgage. There's going to be upsizing. There's going to be referrals. There's a whole bunch of value that you as a rent-to-own partner bring to that mortgage professional. And if that mortgage professional doesn't see the longer term game, they're not in this for long enough to want to be part of your team or to make a great candidate to be part of your team. So I would keep looking in that case, Barry.
Yeah, and all of that said, the one thing that I think we should probably note as well is we've been doing this a long time. Developing those strategic relationships is extremely important. It is time consuming at times. You have to meet a lot of people in order to find the right person. But currently we're sitting with 84 active rent-to-owns, right? So that's 84 leads for a mortgage professional over the next 3 years without them having to advertise. And the coaching side of what they're doing, in all fairness, is maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes over a 3-month window. Right. So they're on the phone, they're talking about what needs to be done. And then maybe once a year, they review the credit to make sure that things are going in the right direction. So the people that we've aligned with really do see the value of, okay, it's not just one, it's not going to be one person and that's maybe all I get from this. There's a lot more coming. And as long as they see the value in that, they're more than happy to step up and help. But again, I stress it, it's not like they're spending hours, maybe a couple of hours over the course of 3 years is all they're really spending in coaching. Because when you have done your due diligence and you've found a character person with determination, they don't need a lot of coaching. They are so driven to make this happen. And again, I go back to the Ontario market because that's what we know, but when they're seeing house prices increase like they are, number one, they're afraid they may not get into the market. And number two, they're seeing that their investment, their small down payment, might return double what they've invested in equity, if not more, right? So I've referenced it before, the carrot, right? That little carrot to make them succeed. That's what it comes down to. And if you've done that whole due diligence thing with determination, you find the right people. They don't need a lot of hand holding.
All right. Well, listen, before we let Wayne go, Ilona has a question. What's your best advice for building the right team? So we talk a lot about team and how important it is. Let's get some thoughts from Wayne on team building, and then Wayne, you can stick around or you can go back to
I'll let you guys finish
playing guitar, because that looks like what you're doing here.
All right. I think Neil kind of touched on it. It's all about building relationships, and if you're giving a broker, a mortgage broker, lots of business, I would actually compare this to wholesaling. When wholesalers ask, how do I get realtors to pull comps for me? As long as you're giving them continuous business, and it looks like you're not just using them. A mortgage broker is going to help you out for like he said, 3 hours over the next 3 years. They're not going to have any problem with that. If you're using them for all your mortgage needs, if you're referring them to other clients, they're not going to have any problem offering a little extra time of their time for that. So I think it's just all about building relationships and not taking advantage of people, spreading the word. When people are looking for a mortgage broker, share their card, share them on social media and that kind of stuff. What other team members would you be looking for in rent-to-own? We've got mortgage broker. I think that's about it. Maybe credit specialist if you know of any credit repair services locally. Same kind.
Well, you got to have a realtor.
Realtor
as well. Yeah, understand.
Home inspector.
Yeah, for sure.
Home inspector who looks at things the same way you do. Now, I'm not sure if Ilona is talking about who should be on your team or how do you find the right team members. But on how do you find the right team members? I mean, you have to talk to people, don't you? You just can't go into the, Google home inspectors and pick the first one that comes up, or mortgage brokers and pick the first one that comes up on a search. I mean, you have to do some investigating. You need to know if If you say, what do you think about rent to own? They go, huh? Well, probably not the right person for you.
Yeah.
Word of mouth, referrals are so, and recommendations are so important in our industry. Getting recommendations from other investors. So, yeah.
You'd ask other investors, who do you use for a mortgage broker on your rent to owns? Who do you use for home inspector? So referrals. What about you guys, Neil and Rachel?
Well, we were, to be honest with you, we were very fortunate in that when we were getting to that critical point in our business, we still had face-to-face meetups, right? So you could actually go to a face-to-face meetup, start chatting with people. They would want to know what you do, how you do it. You would get to know them. And I get it, it's a very short-term discussion, but that discussion has led to multiple discussions. And in fact, our key home inspector, who I think has probably done more, maybe 40 or 45% of our rent-to-own inspections, came as a result of a face-to-face. In fact, our mortgage professionals that we work with all have come as a result of face-to-face. So it might be a bit more difficult now because it's a little bit hard to get to know people over Zoom. But hopefully we'll end up being in a position where we'll go back to the face-to-face meetings and so on. But it's all about relationship. It's all about finding people who mesh with you and basically have the same integrity. Level of integrity is very important. We don't look at our rent-to-owns as a transaction. We look at it as an opportunity to help somebody get ahead. And, meshing with somebody who thinks the same way is really, really important. Somebody who's always talking about, well, when am I getting the next one? I need to make more money. That's not really a good fit for us. So it does come down to building strong relationships that, are going to survive longer than the next deal.
I think one of the things that stands out for me when it comes to building the right team is understanding what value everybody brings to the table. Real estate agents are really an important member of our team, we find, because they're our eyes and ears, basically in more lengthier proximity away from where we are. So as real estate values shift, it seems to move out further and further where our home base is to get a deal done. So real estate agents that are experts in those more, the remote markets that are maybe an hour and a half to 2.5 hours away from where we are our eyes and ears. So it's really important for us to work with people that understand the value that we bring to the relationship, rather than contact us with kind of this kind of approach. And I get this a lot. Hey, I'm a real estate agent. I heard that you do rent to owns. I want you to send me some leads. This is a very classic expectation from real estate agents that might be just starting out. A lot of them see as rent to own being kind of something that we feed to them. And at first I got sucked into that. I thought, okay, well, to satisfy these real estate agents, I have to give them some leads, and that will then create some loyalty and reciprocity. And you know what I found out? That it wasn't that at all. They have no interest in creating a reciprocal relationship. They want it to be very one-sided. So the best advice I can give for building the right team is to ensure that the people that you are going to be collaborating with understand the whole prospect of reciprocity. I'm happy to send leads on rent-to-owns because we get a lot of leads that are not attached to real estate agents. We are a terrific source of leads for certain real estate agents in certain markets. However, if those real estate agents don't understand that they too need to do a little bit of work in their market to bring us opportunities that we can then collaborate on, then that's a dud of a team member for me. And that has taken a long time to figure out. The other piece of advice I can give you to build on Neil's point, it's harder to network right now. It's harder to have that face-to-face relationship building. And that's so critical to establish trust and rapport, because we're a little bit more limited with, essentially establishing relationships through an online platform. I feel that riding the coattails of other credible people will help you build the right team. Because when you say, hey, I'm affiliated with Clover Properties, Neil and Rachel, I'm affiliated with Barry and Donna, that gives you almost instant credibility. And that allows people to take you more seriously. If you don't have a serious, a kind of established presence, ride the coattails of other people in the community that you've received education from or mentorship from. That out of the gate will help you circumvent this issue of lack of networking face-to-face.
A couple of things coming out of that. I mean, it sounds to me like you might use multiple realtors who specialize in different areas, because as the bubble expands, I mean, somebody who's operating over here doesn't know about the needs over here. And I know my hands are out of the picture there, but so do you use multiple realtors because you're operating over such a big area?
We do.
Okay, that makes sense. And folks, I've heard this a number of times, and that is that it takes a while to figure out your team. Just because you pick somebody, as Rachel said, you got sucked in and tried to work with a realtor or two who weren't aligned and weren't interested in reciprocity, 10 of them. So just because you think you're aligned with someone and they're going to be your person, your broker, your realtor, it takes a while, and you may be saying, you know, that didn't work out. I need to find somebody else, and you might go through a few team members, potential team members, until they're actually on the team. Yeah. So I think that's a common experience, and certainly 10 it really emphasizes it. So, all right, well, let's leave the I'm doing my first RTO, or I'm just doing singles and not very many of them. Let's move on to the person who has ratcheted this up a little bit. They're doing rent-own. They've done some successful ones. They like it, but now they're at the stage where they can't qualify for mortgages anymore. They still have rent-own candidates, but they can't buy the house. So how do we introduce joint venture partners into this the second level? How do you talk to them about the business of it? And they're not as involved but still, how do you deal with your joint venture partners and work them into the business?
Do you want me to take this?
Sure.
So when it comes to joint ventures, you, just like with the rent-to-own strategy or any strategy, AFS included, you're solving a problem. So in the rent-to-own context, for families that can't get a mortgage, you're solving a problem for them by helping them rent-to-own. In the context of a joint venture, you are trying to figure out what is the problem that I'm solving for my joint venture partner, and what problem does that solve for me? So when I don't have the capacity to take on mortgages, I now need to find someone that can offset that. So what do I bring to the table? Do I bring knowledge to the table? Or do I bring cash to the table and knowledge? Great, I know exactly what I'm bringing to the table. Now I understand where the gap is. And I think, okay, well, how does this gap satisfy the needs of someone else? Perhaps somebody is not satisfied with the returns they're making on their RSPs, or perhaps they just had a child that needs to now go into daycare and they need to bring in some cash flow to offset daycare expenses, or perhaps they have a child going off to university and that child wants to live off campus and rent, for $800 a month, and the family's like, okay, where is this $800 a month going to come from? So you kind of have to think about what problem is being solved for my partner by joint venturing. And if you lead from this is how I can solve your problem point of view, you don't really have to get into a lot of details in terms of how it all works. You basically just have to start from how, by partnering, we help each other reach our individual goals, and be as transparent as possible, of course, but also not less is more. When you talk to someone who, like Barry, you were saying, when someone is not really understanding real estate investing, don't try to go into a lot of details with them. Wait for them to ask the questions and then feed the answers as transparently as possible. So listen more than you talk when it comes to those types of joint venture partners.
Yeah, it's the, go ahead, Neil.
No, I was just going to say, I used that line actually on my kid yesterday.
Who's not a joint venture partner.
Listen more than you talk, because that's how you become educated. But the reality is the numbers as well is going to attract people right off the bat, because the cash flow can be very good. The returns are as good as almost any other strategy out there without having to put additional labor into them, and I'm talking flips and so on. But on top of that, track record is also important, right? If you have done 5 successfully or 3 successfully, and you have 2 more coming that are also very successful, most people will love to work with you, right? But if you're the type of person who has screwed 3 people and they've fallen apart and you're stuck with a rental, now you're going to get people going, I just don't know that I want to get involved in a situation where, I don't see the exit strategy the way you see it, right? So relationship again, and I use this word a lot because relationships are so important, from qualifying to finding the right property with the realtors, to repairing credit through the mortgage professionals, to also having strong relationships with your investors. We're not friends with every investor, not like good friends, but we have a lot of investors that we work with who we become friends with because we share the same ideologies. We invest for the same purpose. And as those relationships get stronger, people refer more people, right? And that's really what relationship can do, right? It's so much more powerful than I think people really give it credit for. But with joint ventures, I also believe that relationship is very important because, like I said, they want to work with somebody who is like them, has the same goals as them, and can provide them with the solution that they're looking for to their problem. And some of the problems that Rachel mentioned are actually things that we have encountered. We had one investor who did multiples of these because he wanted the cash flow to pay for daycare or, Montessori, and really didn't have to worry about where that money was going to come from, right? It's not coming out of his bank account and then not replenishing itself. They actually used their investments to pay for Montessori and knew that they were still going to make back that money over time. So, you definitely have to build relationship, and you have to make sure that you answer or solve a problem that somebody is looking to have solved.
And it's usually cash flow driven. Rent to own has the benefit because there's a lot of joint venture opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities to, lend on second mortgages and generate returns, or you can lend out money short-term, hard money for a flip, or you can put your money into a BRRRR. There's a lot of different ways that people who are looking to grow their money might be considering. What rent to own really has going for it is cash flow. So you basically need to seek out people who have a problem that $500, $600, $700, $800 a month of cash flow could potentially solve, and they love cash flow as much as we do. That's what we look for. We look for people who love cash flow as much as we do, and we solve that problem for them.
Isn't it amazing that as we talk about the success factors, it always comes back to problem solving, to helping, to creating win-win, and to being, as Rachel said, transparent. I mean, people have to believe right away that you're giving them the straight goods and that you want to help them. But if that's where you're coming from, the cash flow that they can get, or the profit that they can make over the course of the rent to own, and an amazing profit it can be for sure. Somehow that trails along, and it is important, and people want to know about it, but it becomes secondary in the helping and problem solving approach. And they just kind of follow along better than saying first words out of your mouth. Do you know you can make 15% on your, annually on your money? They said, would you like to do a deal with me? I mean, just not the way to do it. So I'm glad you experienced it like that too, because Donna and I have from square one in our focus workshops that, they're at least 10 years old now. We saw that as the way to achieve success in a creative world where it's a little harder to say what you're doing, but helping, problem solving, and win-win is really the way to go. And you guys have just said that again. So it's nice to hear successful people say that that's the way to do it, because Donna and I really believe that. Now, what about on the business side? What kind of reporting do you do with your joint venture partners throughout the course of the rent to own? How do you keep them up to speed on what's going on? And how do you give them what they need to give to their accountant every year so they can add in their rent-to-own investment into their taxes. How do you handle that aspect of things?
So there's varying degrees of reporting. Some investors want more ongoing reporting. Some investors don't want any, and some are kind of in between. Every investor is a little bit different. For the most part, everyone is doing this for cash flow. So there's nothing like cold hard cash landing in your bank account every single month that essentially gives you all the reporting that you need. Neil obviously has a slightly different approach. So when people are requesting paperwork for taxes, we do supply rent. Is it rent receipts?
Yeah, we have a rent roll that we track all the rent payments that come in, the dates that they come in, obviously, and it does double duty because we are tracking it from the tenant buyer side as well to make sure that we can align the credits back to them the way they should be aligned. But definitely what's the rent roll has gone a long way, and allowing a JV partner to understand where their investment has gone, how much they've earned in their investment, and then taking their the rent roll plus their JV agreement to their accountant, and then basically working through their taxes each year. So that's really been most of the documentation that we've had to provide. I don't recall. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The rent roll and the agreement's really what we've been using.
So that's good. I mean, Rachel, I agree. I mean, if you've told them that they're getting X dollars in their account every month and X dollars show up, then I guess people don't phone you up and say, so how are they doing in their credit repair? I mean, that's up to you guys to manage, and your investors don't really care about that, I don't think.
Yeah, most investors come to us because we are the specialists in the deal, that either we're the deal finder or we're a joint venture partner. Whatever role we play, we are basically the boots on the ground. And we establish right up front what the expectations are. Some investors tell us up front, I would like to receive an annual report. And we put it into the contracts when that annual report will be provided and what will it cover. Some prefer no reporting at all, and they just want to make sure that the cash flow is coming in. So it's really important to manage expectations at the very beginning, just like we manage expectations with the tenant buyer, with the real estate agents we're partners with the mortgage professionals we're partnering with, everyone that is involved. We essentially manage those expectations before the deal is really at a point of transacting. And that has helped tremendously in essentially getting things done fluidly and ensuring a smooth process. And it's also created more repeat relationships, repeat businesses. We are very blessed to have a very extensive network of real estate agents, mortgage professionals, and knock on wood, we have a waiting list of investors who want to work with us. And all of that has been built up because of this managing expectations approach out of the gate.
Managing expectations, Rachel, I don't know if it's the distaff side of things, but Donna is always on me about managing expectations. And it doesn't really matter who it is or what the situation is. If there's an expectation in there, you have to manage it for sure. And I think that's a subtle but important thing for people to notice, that if you're working with tenant buyers, investors, home inspectors, realtors, mortgage brokers, I mean, all of those, there is a specific interaction you're having with them, and they need to know who you are and what you're doing. And yeah, you have to be pretty clear on what those expectations are, because it is so easy to have misunderstandings about who's doing what and what responsibility lies where, and what are the success factors that we all have to work on. So yeah, I think that's a really good one on the business side, is to specifically and thoughtfully manage the expectations. I like that one. Well, let's move on to where you are, and where not too many people are, and where not too many people are going to get to. I mean, you're full-time. You're full-time in the rent-to-own business. Both of you both did other jobs where you got paid pretty well, and now you don't have those jobs, and you're full-time in rent-to-own. So that's really the top end of what we want to talk about today. And how does running it as a full-time business differ from the other two? I'm just starting, or I'm just joint venturing on my first couple. How does it differ as a business when you reach your, can I say, rarefied level?
I would like to, I would basically summarize it in one word: systems.
Yes.
You need a repeatable approach. You need systems and a systemic approach to doing everything. Otherwise, you're going to get bogged down and there's not enough hours in the day. And honestly, if I kind of had to turn the clock back 11 years when we first got started, we didn't have enough clarity about what we wanted to do with these rent to owns. We were just happy doing our first 4 deals, $2,000 a month cash flow, great, woo. But then things started to kind of snowball from there. We started getting phone calls, we started getting inquiries, and we realized that our knowledge was valuable, and people wanted us to bring that knowledge to a joint venture or to solve a problem for more tenant buyers. And we thought, okay, well, this is great, let's do more of these. And we just kind of like haphazardly kind of like stumbled along. If I had to do it differently, going back 11 years, I would have defined very clearly, are we going to do this as a business? Because when you're doing things as a business, you operationalize things very differently. We operated like a mom and pop shop without a lot of, I would say, clarity, goals. It took us too long to figure out that, hey, we can actually do this as a business. There's an opportunity here to add value to so many more people than what we're doing today, and systemize and operationalize sooner, because we wasted a lot of time and really were kind of pounding the pavement when we could have simplified it. And we didn't know any better. So if I can give any advice to anyone who's looking at maybe doing rent to own as a business, doing more than 4 deals, start out of the gate with the thought of, what is my plan, what is my goal, and how am I going to systemize and operationalize?
And my advice, and we're going to be very quiet about this because I don't want Rachel to hear, but you can't do it alone. And for many of those years, I wore every hat. I qualified, I advertised, I built the website, I updated the website, I did all my Google stuff online. I met with every tenant buyer. I went to every home inspection. I was literally involved knee deep in every single transaction. And I was really good at a lot of things, but I wasn't an expert at any. And what Rachel decided was that we weren't going to do that anymore. And we started to rely on other people. So, we now have at a point where I'm not going to every home inspection, but I'm still reviewing the report, because I want to make sure that, we're not moving into a situation that might not be good for the tenant buyer or the investor, of course. But we started to build out our team in a much more serious fashion. It wasn't me becoming a mortgage agent so I could do everything from that perspective. It was me being sure that I was qualifying them at the top end, the highest level I could qualify them at. And then I'm handing them over to somebody who just basically had to do the couple hours over 3 years to make some commission. So that would be my biggest a bit of advice as well, is don't think that you can do it all. You can maybe for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 deals, but let me tell you, when you get into, and we went from very quickly, we did like 1 or 2 in the first year because I was being very conservative and I was really dragging my feet. But then we went to 10 deals the next year to 50. And it was like, whoa, we were doing 2, 3, 4 a week. And I was running around and not sleeping and not getting, it was crazy. But once we relied on other people and we actually, and this is for anything, obviously, but this is my advice for rent to own, start looking at the people around you who are really good at what they do, and then, build the relationship with them, and then start to trust that they're going to be able to do what they need to do.
But before you do that, if you see that this is a sustainable opportunity for you, think about who you can partner with on the business itself. Who do you know that can help you run the numbers? Who do you know that can help you screen the tenant buyers? It's a numbers game. There's going to be a lot of phone calls, a lot of tire kickers, a lot of conversations, a lot of educational type of conversations. Who do you know that can help you offset the time? There's still only 24 hours in the rent to owns. So out of the gate, think about who you can partner with on the operational side of the business. And this is one of the reasons, Barry, we wanted to introduce that partner opportunity. If you have someone in mind that you think would be a great opportunity to partner with on rent to own or joint venture with on rent to own, bring them into the workshop that we're going to be hosting. And when you buy the course for them, you get in for free. So it allows you and your partner to get off on the right foot. You don't want to be the one that's getting the education and then educating your partner. You want to start out of the gate both being educated at the same time. It's not 1 + 1 means 2. You're going to have exponential value from both of you getting educated at the same time.
Right. And the last thing, maybe don't see other rent-to-own people as competition, because there's a lot of people out there that can't qualify for mortgages, far more than you might expect. And there's lots of opportunity for lots of people to be in rent to own and to be doing rent to owns. But over the course of time, we have worked with other rent to own companies, as have they worked with us. They found a great tenant buyer, they qualified them, they were unable to place them because they didn't have enough investors. They would call us to help out, and we would pay a referral, or we would find some way to accommodate and make it worthwhile for everybody, and vice versa. At the very beginning, we were doing the same thing. We had people in, maybe 2-3 hours away from here that we couldn't help, and we would find somebody who could help them in that area. So it's really important to remember that it's not a competitive business. It's a business where, when you do it with integrity, tenant buyers will find you. And they'll find you through every channel possible: advertising, referrals, realtors. It's really just about making sure you're doing this from the right perspective. And, again, I just think that there are a lot of people that think very competitively about different things in life. This should never be one of them, right? Because there's just, we get anywhere from 40 to 60 calls in a month. So, we cannot do 40 to 60 rent to owns in a month. So, there are times where we're just at a point where we can't take on anymore, that we will refer out. In fact, I was talking to Wayne about a potential rent to own out in Alberta that we don't work there, but I have a mortgage agent that we work with here that might have a client for somebody in Alberta. So just be prepared that you want to have partnerships. You want to get to know the people that are in your industry, and you want to be friendly with them, because you never know when they can help.
We get a lot of inquiries from BC, people who know of what we do and want us to help do rent to owns in the BC market. And we can't touch that market, but we certainly would refer opportunities to partner to other rent to own companies out there. The same thing in Alberta, and even out east. We've had recently more inquiries from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick.
So just kind of wrap up here. It's absolutely crystal clear to me that you didn't arrive at where you are today just getting there. I mean, you started, you moved on from what you could do on your own. You got some joint venture partners. You made the big decision to move into this full time, and all along the way, you played for win-win. You tried to solve problems, and the trust and the reputational position that builds you as you start out from just beginning to get to the point where you are, it almost becomes self-sustaining. If you have a good plan and you are really looking to solve problems, help people, and play for win-win, all of those things, it carries you along until you get to the spot where you are, and then you go, okay, now we're really busy. So let's think of the things that we can get great team members to do and take off our plate. And let's think of systems and how to operationalize this, because the last thing we want to do is, when a new opportunity comes in, say, okay, now what do we do at this stage of it? Oh, I'll just go to my checklist and see what we do at this stage. Checklist, systems, operationalize, start from the beginning properly, let it build along. You will get referrals, your networks will grow, and the competitive side of it, I really totally agree with that. There just is lots of room in the marketplace for rent to own or creative real estate of all kinds. I've really noticed over the years that when I'm doing deals, it's very rare for two of my clients to show up on the opposite side of a deal. So I have to say, gee, sorry, I can only act for one of you, or different RAE members. There's lots and lots of opportunities to create a great, solid business. I congratulate you on where you guys have gotten to. it's absolutely amazing. Not very many people do it. You guys have put a lot of heart and soul into it and done it very successfully. And I'm so grateful that you're going to show up on March the 6th. And we're going to go into, folks, all of these things that we talked about today and many more things in great detail over a full day of rent to own. So I think that's all I had for tonight. Do you guys have any parting words, or have we covered the waterfront here?
I think we're good. I think the loud and clear message should be coming through is that if you're looking to do rent to own as a business, you need to have a partner, and you need to bring that partner in as soon as possible to make sure that you and your partner are on the same page in terms of goals, aspirations, and education.
And education is what we're talking about. That's March 6th. You guys know about it. I'm not going to talk about March 6th anymore because I've said it enough. All right. Well, thanks again, Neil and Rachel, for taking time out of your day to help us out. So we'll sign off now and look forward to the next one.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Barry.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Good night.